Welcome, Hess. I understand you spend 4 days out of the week working at the Parc des Evaux. What do you do there, and why this passion?
Hi, Marcia. Well, I'm a member of a team of four, and together we do a lot of planning to create a permaculture garden. I mean, I love it because it's with nature. We're using nature to help us produce vegetables, and it's also a really, really beautiful place as well, with lots of oak trees. I help to implement the designs and the creation. So we're this year we're going to be doing the construction of the tunnels, the pathways, the creation of wildlife habitats, and there's planting of the harvesting as well, and collecting seed and that kind of thing. So it's very, very varied throughout the year.
Who directs this project?
Originally, the idea came from the director of the park, and he wanted to create a vegetable garden to supply a new restaurant that they're opening in the spring of this year, 2021. So Daniel Whittle and Karine Aubin thought of developing the place with him to create a permaculture garden, providing food for restaurants and opening it to visitors and kids. And so eventually they created an association to do all this. So really, Daniel and Karine are the main founders of the project, and we directed with them.
So, what is a permaculture garden, and why call it a garden? Why not call it a garden?
Permaculture really is a response to all the traditional farming and agricultural practices that we have at the moment, and it's about using and helping nature and the planet so that we can all live in symphony. For me, it's about working with nature, creating a cycle where everything is reused, using the processes of nature to aid the production of food, using techniques to bring in wildlife and birds, keeping up the nutrient levels of the soil by using plants that produce nitrogen. And then we also do a lot of associations of various plants which help each other to sustain each other and produce the maximum as well.
How do you plan for such a design?
The original design was already outlined when I arrived, with many of the specific structures already there, already in place on the plan. So since then, I started working with Daniel and Karine, and we've added a lot of the more detailed structures and a lot more specific structures. So basically, we started with the kind of zonage idea, which basically the humans and the most frequented places are zone 0. And from zone 0, you slowly move out to zone 6, which really is the wild, pure nature area. So we take advantage of each area where the systems come into contact with another area. So this we call the edge zone. In our garden, it's a bit different because we're going to have so many different visitors throughout the year and every day. So we've had to really think a little bit more sustainably towards the zonage and the frequency of visitors. So we've used various techniques to create sustainable infrastructure. For example, the pond in front of the greenhouse will reflect the winter sun to help warm the greenhouse. This we will use in conjunction with a system called the Wallapini greenhouse.
A wallapini? What's a wallapini?
So Wallapini is an underground passive solar greenhouse. The greenhouse is sunken into the ground, and then the earth around the greenhouse in which the greenhouse sits is used to warm the greenhouse, because the earth really never, once you go below a certain depth, it stays as constant temperature throughout the year. As the greenhouse heats up during the day, the soil holds the heat and then releases it at night, stopping the greenhouse from getting too cold. For us, it was a bit different because the soil is so bad where our greenhouse is, so we had to adapt a bit to it. So what we did in the end was we used the pond in front, and then we have a wall at the north side of the greenhouse to hold the heat and to create habitat and for wildlife and for plants as well. So another technique we use is called Hugel beds. That's the English word. In French, they're called buttes, We use a lot of dead wood and branches, and we bury these under the ground in a trench. And then the rotting wood holds moisture, and then heat is generated as well as the logs break down, and they also release nutrients and elements to the plants to grow better. Um, and as part of our planning, we're also going to try grow some unusual plants as well, such as passion fruit, moringa, the mango, the Canadian mango, lots of unusual fruit trees, really, to just to make it far more interesting, and also to extend our harvest period.
I understand that there are groups of children that come to the park. Tell me how this plays out.
Well, our original mandate of the association is to provide the vegetables for the restaurant, but another mandate is to educate the public and to invite school children to the garden as well. A school in Ane has been coming regularly to the garden. We're learning a lot with them how to work, with the actual children themselves and learning from their needs as well. Normally, we divide the group into two groups. One group will join me, for instance, and we will do, cuttings, collecting seeds and plants. And the other group will stay with the teacher and do various kind of maths and model making things. So they also have done made scarecrows with us and created wildlife habitats. And we also, go around the garden and show them the various herbs and smell the leaves and feel all the different textures. And we figure out, we tell them also what a lot of the plants are used for medicinally. And we often go into the forest as well and show them mushrooms and various habitats that are already there. So other schools have also visited us last year, and the school on it has really been our pilot project for this year. It's been really, really interesting and fun to collaborate with them. I've learned a lot, and I've learned that we do not always need to create an amazing activity for the children. The children just love being in the garden, exploring, digging, discovering, and also asking a lot of their own questions. We can also follow the interests of the students and let them guide us in what they want us to do. So, I mean, classrooms from several different schools have also visited this year, spending normally half of the day with us, normally the morning. And so we applied the same setup with half the class working with me and then half the class working with the teacher. So, I mean, we'd like for as many schools to come year round. Soon we'll be able to do work in the tunnels in the winter. So it's really year round.
Like human beings, many plants, I understand, work well if they're combined with certain other plants. What are some of those plants and why do they work well together?
Yeah, there are many plants that can be associated or planted together, but one of the most famous associations is called the Three Sisters, and it's a Native American practice. The Three Sisters are maize, beans, and squash, or courgettes, or pumpkins. You can plant the maize first, and then you plant the beans. The maize provides the beans with the necessary support from the beanstalk for the beanstalk. The beans also pull a lot of the nitrogen from the air and bring it into the soil for the corn, so the corn can grow better. And at the base of the maize, you also plant the courgettes or pumpkins or squash. And the large leaves of these plants to keep the weeds down. They give shade to the soil and the roots and keep it cool and moist. And together, these plants, they're really, they're the perfect combination. They provide sustainable soil fertility and they stop weeds and pests and they really enrich the soil as well.
Not all plants get along, though. Why is that so?
This is true. Some plants produce certain chemicals that other plants do not like. Some plants do not get along because they require also the same nutrients. Fennel is probably one of the most difficult plants to associate with other plants. Most plants dislike being planted near it whatsoever. Carrots, for example, do not like to be planted near dill, and then also cucumbers do not like to be planted with sage because the sage also attracts, different pests that feed on the cucumbers.
Hmm. Well, returning to what you said about a permaculture, it sounds like permaculture is a process of growing awareness. how to live sustainably and ensure that our needs are met while benefiting the environment. I understand that some ancient cultures practice this way of living. What ancient cultures come to mind?
Yeah, exactly. Permaculture's roots really lie deeply in the ancient wisdom of indigenous science. Going back to the association of plants, the three sisters, the association of maize, beans, and pumpkins was used really right back to ancient tribes and cultures like the Aztecs, creating enough food so that their culture could survive and flourish. The Aztecs also used floating gardens. They wove sticks together to form giant rafts, and then they put the mud from the bottom of the lake onto the raft to create a layer of soil. And these gardens were then anchored to the lake by willow trees planted at each corner. And then the Aztecs, if they wanted, could move the islands where they wanted, depending on which one of the elements they needed. And so yeah, it's really a long used culture. So the waste has also been turned into a resource. All the nutrients were reused. Dead plants served as mulch. The fish poop in the water gave nutrients for the plants. In the Far East, there are also rice terraces that were over 1,000 years old and still used to this day. The forests above the terraces helped stabilize the land. The forests deliver nutrients towards the land down below in the terraces. With the slow rain, it also slows the rain runoff. Everything that happens in the terraces starts with the forest above them.
So, students could study these ancient cultures through the lens of sustainability. Perhaps we can restore some valuable ancient knowledge in our studies.
Exactly. In many ways, the thinking that goes with permaculture is using a lot of the ideas and knowledge people have used thousands of years ago, working with nature.
Thank you, Hess, for taking the time with me last summer when I first visited the garden that you've been so enthusiastic about for over a year, when we worked together in another place. And I thank you for taking the time to share what is happening at the Parc des Evaux and your passion and love for what you're doing. Do you have any final words to share with teachers who may listen to this interview?
Really, just contact us. That's the main thing. We're happy to welcome you to the farm and do a visit, and we can set up something to cater for your classroom visits. So I suppose the people to contact would be Karine Aubin or Daniel Whittle, and their contacts are on the website for the Parc des Evaux under news.
Thank you, Hess.